Now being the time and hour, we're going to call the regular board meeting of the Vallecitos Water District to order. And Gina, if you would come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gina. Great job. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here. And I need a motion to adopt the agenda with one change. We're going to be tabling 2.2.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Consent calendar, all in one motion. We're going to approve the minutes, warrant list, and the Splash newsletter.
Nope. You skipped the introductions.
Oh, I'm very, very sorry. I skipped a whole bunch of them.
I like it though, so let's keep moving that fast.
Sorry. You know, I like to slow things down, so I'm sorry about
Oof.
that.
Meeting's adjourned.
Okay, introduction of new
Introductions.
employees.
Wow.
This
Jeez.
is July,
Budget must be good.
so actually, we'll go in date order. We're gonna start with George Esteves. He joined the district on July 7th in the position of Systems Collections Worker 1. For the last 4 years, George has worked for the city of Escondido in both the water and wastewater departments. He's married to Caroline, and they have 2 young sons, Jack and Cash. In his free time, he enjoys going to the gym and hanging out with his kids at the pool.
And George got a free shirt already? He just started.
Good timing.
Wow, perfect timing.
Recognition for you being here.
All right, moving on, we have Jason Hubbard. He joined the district on July 14th in the new position of Capital Facilities Senior Engineer. He joins us from the private sector, where he worked for Docket Engineering and Don Hubbard Contracting. He has 4 children, Caleb, Michaela, Quinlan, and Kate. Got it. Married to Meredith, and in his leisure time, Jason enjoys time with the family, home brewing, hiking, traveling, and taking care of potbelly pigs.
Wow.
I asked if you need that out. And then finally, we have Lisa Whitesell. She started on July 22nd, so we're a week apart. Engineering Technician 3, which is a vacancy that's left from a recent retirement. She joins us from Eastern Municipal Water District, where she's worked in engineering for the last 8 years. And in her free time, she enjoys paddleboarding, hiking, and traveling.
That was a good steel staff.
Yeah, we got some good ones. Well, you've probably all seen Hubbard on Linda Vista.
Oh, yeah.
Sign Hubbard
Yeah.
Construction, yeah. It's
Yeah.
been around a long time.
Lisa, how long were you with Eastern?
8 years.
And did you move down here for this job, or had you moved down here and started looking for a
I
job?
moved down here 2 years ago and was making the commute.
Oh.
Really?
Oh,
2 years.
wow.
Wow.
And did you get a shirt as well? Anyone?
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you. All right. Oral communication, I have Michael Hunsaker. Oh, I'm sorry, 2.4. So we won't do Michael right now. Okay, then I can move to consent calendar. Approve the minutes, warrant list, and the Splash newsletter. Motion
I
second.
approve it, except I need to abstain, so do I pull that aside?
You need to abstain from it?
I have to, I wasn't at the board meeting on
Oh, for the approval of minutes.
that.
You know, it's a ministerial
It's a ministerial
act,
act.
so it's
Oh, I
okay
thought
for
you-
you to
Yeah.
participate in it, in that
I remember
sense.
you told us that not too
Yeah,
long
you're,
ago.
Yes.
so it's okay.
Okay. I'm moving for approval.
Need a motion and a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I do have a couple of questions on the warrant list, which I pre-warned. Travel expenses, and I think that's page 16 or 17? Right in the middle. It's bank card charge for travel expense. And there's 3 of them listed together. Am I at the right place?
Sorry, there we go. Those are our credit cards, the district credit cards. We have 3 of them. One of them is for Dennis, one of them is for Tom, and then we have an overall for the district. And what we do is for the most part, we make purchases for travel for yourselves, and so we kind of shorten the description on that one. But we have the 3 cards, and they each require a separate check. That's why it's listed 3 times.
Okay, but I think together it's like $10,000 for that month?
Yes.
Yeah. But it includes, again, one of them will handle travel for myself and the board. Tom is the backup, and then the other is any other expenses or travel that's associated with the district. So we could be paying for your trip now, that's not, take until 3 months.
Okay.
So we could be paying for CASA already for all 4 of you, but it's not until next month. But that's per the purchasing policy, we have those 3 cards, and they require 2 signatures and two people to hold them.
Okay, thank you. Page 18, 6 down, we have an ERC, which I don't know what that acronym means, but ERC membership, $3,200.
I'm sorry, page 16?
No, 18.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
If I wrote it down correctly.
That's a human resources group, it's Liebert Whitmore Cassidy. We belong to a consortium that on an annual basis, we use their firm for any associated human relations, HR issues that pop up during the year.
Okay, so it's just a group, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Go right ahead.
I just have one question. It's more technical than the financial. It was on 16, and it's the aquametric sales, and we bought 80 water meters. Are those the new water meters that we're replacing? And is that typical to do 80 at once? Or?
It's not unusual to have we keep an inventory of them, so when we change them out, so it's just a replenishment of inventory.
These are the 5/8, 3/4 things?
They're actually all 3/4
The
now.
3/4.
Or those, there might be some bigger meters in there too, but our base meter is now 3/4.
Yeah.
So that would include probably some of the 3/4. Don't know specifically what that order is, but it's,
Thank you.
On page 18, I see hydrants, 19,000. Is that the local thing that we just
Yes.
agreed to do?
Yep.
And we've already purchased the equipment?
The equipment's all purchased, the materials will all be here, I think, on the 15th, give or take. And then we anticipate by the end of the month actually completing the upgrades.
And there's 9? I thought there were only 5. Did I see, 9 down, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said there's only 5.
Okay, thank you.
There's actually 3 others that were up there in the area, but they're City of San Marcos with San Marcos Fire, and they're dealing with those separately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But they are taking care of it?
Yeah.
And then 4th from the bottom, OM, $9,600.
O&M stands for Operations and Maintenance.
Yeah, that's a company.
It's Total Resources Management is the company. And what they do is they provide support to our computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS, which handles all of our facilities, all of our assets, so that when we go out and do repairs on a particular asset, we can track that repair, see how many times that asset's been repaired, how long it takes, how much equipment was required to repair that asset, so we can plan out future repairs.
So that's a yearly fee?
I would have to, this may actually be a couple of invoices together. It may be a couple of months' worth of invoices. I'd have to go back and,
Is that something we're looking at doing internally in the future?
Well, we use them on an as-needed basis when we need to do programming for something to go in and actually set up a routine or do some kind of routine within it. It's not custom programming, it's something that's not black box, but it would be support when we get in deeper and deeper into developing it. If it's something that it doesn't do, they would come in and help us write the program and develop it.
Thank you.
It's budgeted. Yeah, it's a budgeted expense on an annual basis.
Any other questions?
I have a
Please.
comment.
Please?
I just want to congratulate the district on the splash. I thought it was an excellent splash. It was very informative, and I had 2 neighbors actually comment on it, so I was quite impressed. Thank you. Very, very nicely done.
Yeah, it's a very nice addition.
Very right on the point.
They missed a photo, but I'm gonna show it later on. It's supposed to be in Splash.
The photo of that
I'll
splash.
show it in a minute.
Okay.
Toward the end of the meeting.
I just want to make sure I was impressed at my neighbors.
Yeah,
Actually,
that
wanted
actually
to
brought
say
it up.
something.
Thank you. So I need a roll call on consent.
If it's majority, you can just call for all in favor.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No against.
Then you just let the chair, the secretary know that it was approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Save the roll call if we don't need to.
I know. I'm just careful. Careful the attorney on the end jumping all over.
I'll keep them in check.
Yeah. Okay. Action items, 2.1, fats, oils, and grease, our FOG program update.
Yeah, I'll have Corey, if you come up. You may recall that the board adopted the new fats, oil, and grease program. It is new, and it actually ties into something that you'll be hearing about from Jerome a little bit later, the sanitary sewer maintenance program. When the board adopted this, we went through and what we would be doing. We have some estimated costs based upon estimates literally of time, looking at other agencies comparable size. Brand new program starting, so the direction the board gave us was move forward. We don't know what actual expenses are yet, but come back and give us a 6-month update on where we're at. We'll make a decision, and we'll go from there. So Corey will just bring you up to speed on this, and you can see by the recommendation, once he actually went over this with me, what I'd recommend to the board is continue to defer the collection of any fees for an additional 6 months. At that point, we should be through all the restaurants. It's a lot of time to get to them all. He's cringing right now. But then we'll come back in another 6 months, give the board another update, and then we can just move forward with whether or not to collect the fees. With that, Corey?
Thank you.
And I will be in 6 months. I will be done. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Corey Harrell, Vallecitos Water District Source Control Technician. I'll be giving an update on the district's fog control program. Last time we met was December 10th board meeting, and that is when we actually approved the ordinance that was, approved the ordinance supporting the program. It was actually adopted at that point in time. So we'll go ahead and we'll go through. Following the adoption of the ordinance, public outreach started from that point. You can see February 28th, notice was published in North County Times. We had a notice put in there. March 3rd, letters were sent out to all food service establishments and account holders of the district. March 17th, a FOG workshop was held here. Ended up being, the attendance wasn't as high as I thought it was going to be. It ended up being about 13 facilities showed up to the workshop itself. But I talked to other agencies, and they said that was a pretty good number itself for facilities showing up. So we had that. Then we actually published an article in the San Marcos 360, which was published in the summer edition. And also, I met with City of San Marcos on April 10th. Went over the inspection program itself. April 15th, City of Escondido.
I'm sorry. Who'd you meet with in the city?
Reed, Thornberry, and Barry.
Are they actually gonna
Barry
help
Reynolds?
you?
Yeah, Barry
implement?
Reynolds, yeah. They are, Barry Reynolds is more on the engineering side of it, approving plans and stuff like that. So I got with him, and then Reed Thornberry, he is actually part of the stormwater. And it was kind of a joint meeting where we had, and it actually worked out pretty good because he was kind of excited about this program. And when he's doing inspections, they can look at certain things for our program and vice versa. So when I'm doing inspection, I could look at certain things for their program itself. So it kind of worked out really good. I did put in the email if anybody else wanted to attend, but it was just them two that actually attended the meeting. And then you see April 15th, I met with the City of Escondido. What that was, there was 2 FSCs that were in our service area that ended up in their fog control program. I'm not sure how that happened, but they've been inspecting them for years. So I met with the City of Escondido, talked to them about it, let them know that we actually have a fog control program now for inspecting restaurants, and that we would be taking over the responsibility of those 2 restaurants.
Are those on board?
Those are on El Norte and Country Club.
Yeah,
You have a 7-Eleven, and then there's a Mexican food place there.
right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Good food,
Very good food, yeah.
very good food.
And there's actually, they actually had the.
Cenote.
Cenote, I think that's what it is, yeah.
It's a great place.
From New
Good
York.
food.
Yeah. And they actually had, there's a blue cup and tea something or other in their program, but they're not really alfalfa producers, so as of right now, I'm putting them off the program until further notice on that. And then actually on August 20th, actually this month, the 20th of this month, it's actually set up to have a meeting with the school district, and we're gonna be introducing the program to all 14 restaurants, or actually schools at one time. Other activities that I've been working on, there's actually been working with Encina. There's been several occasions where our treatment plant process, the treatment of our treatment plant has been interrupted, and Don's been, have to change the chemical dosage and so on. So I've been working with the supervisor of the plant and Encina to try to figure out where the source is coming from. That's a kind of a ongoing process. Actually, just a couple weeks back, just got a users list for industrial users and so on that are high volume users, high water users, so anybody 25,000 and greater. We have a list so we can kind of go through and try to figure out where the source is coming from. Yes,
25,000
gallons
per day, minute, hour, what?
per day.
Per day?
Yeah, per day, yeah. So it's the higher industrial users. It's usually she's getting hit towards the later part of the month or the first of the month. It's usually early in the morning, and it's just interrupting her process for her treatment. So that's where, you know, we're looking at the higher users, see if somebody's dumping something of some sort or what. So I'm in the process of ordering some samplers where we can actually set out throughout the district to start taking some sample locations.
And I'm sorry, are you calling the treatment plant to her?
Yeah, I'm sorry, wastewater treatment plant, yes. So that would be Don, which is the supervisor, I'm sorry.
Dawn?
Don.
Yeah.
Dawn.
You kept saying, the New York,
Yeah.
New York Dawn.
So yeah, that would be the supervisor of the wastewater treatment plant, which is Don. I've been working with her.
And if you would correct me, part of this program was, we were looking for someone who's gonna pick this greases up and bring them to Encina? Is my memory right? Or am
Yeah,
I-
that's
you're
part
definitely right
of the
on that,
long
yes.
term, because what happened right now, the two reps from Encina can speak to this. The Encina's doing a design build program right now, and it's not a food enhancement, it's a energy enhancement program. I can't remember what they call it. But what they're doing is developing a grease receiving facility so that we will have it on site that will take white and brown grease, I believe, is what we're looking for. They want more brown grease, but they'll take white as well. So once that is up and running, they have a guaranteed hauler with a guaranteed price, who we know will do it right. So as part of what Corey's reaching out is he has other haulers, but we will also give them this information, so we know if they use it, it comes from the restaurant, it goes straight to Encina, we know it's taken care of properly, but that's yet to come. I think they've got 3 months yet to finish building the grease facility over at Encina. So that's still a long term, but it'll probably be 6 months out.
So in the interim period, though, grease that's being picked up goes where?
Most likely City of San Diego, Point Loma. They're one of the few that actually have a dedicated grease receiving facility, but it's a long haul.
There's a lot of companies that pick it up and turn it into biofuel and so on. They actually use it to produce fuels. So,
There's a whole industry out there.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll pay you to pick it up, sometimes not.
Yeah.
It depends on.
It's about half and half. Talking to the facilities out there, it's about half and half. Some will actually give them the yellow and brown grease, and they'll actually clean the grease trap or interceptor for free. So they're getting they're getting a service for giving them the grease itself.
So we have yellow, brown, and white grease?
It's yellow and brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yellow stuff, the clean stuff, the
That's right.
clean, vegetable
Okay.
oil, which is in fryers and so on. The brown grease is produced by food. Okay, and then also I've been working on Restaurant Row. We actually dye tested, Vallecitos dye tested and smoke tested 5 locations out there to determine if stormwater runoff is running into the sanitary sewer system. So that was actually done. There was a lot of time that was spent on that, and I'm in the process of writing a letter to the city of San Marcos and let them know what the findings are on that.
Great. I'm sure they'll be thrilled.
Yep. And then also I've been working quite a bit of time with Tom on the strength of service study. There's 25 locations we determined. It took a lot of time to kind of analyze and figure out what locations we can take samples from so we can get a base sample to start this strength of service study. So I've been doing some time on that. And that's the other activities there. The meet and greets, I started in April after I did the public outreach on it. It says currently 113. I'm actually at 157 right now. There's about 200 and probably between 200 and 213 that are probably going to be in the program itself. So I'm getting closer. I'm kind of seeing the daylight right now. Definitely took me a little bit longer than I thought because of the next thing there. You can see where the time where I have to actually visit the restaurants. I was thinking it was going to be some more time, but basically most restaurants don't open until 11 o'clock. So I have pretty much 10:30 if I'm knocking on the door and they let me in till about 11:30, and then they're getting ready for lunch itself. And then after lunch, I have from about 1 to 3:30 itself to visit. So it kind of cut the period of time where we could introduce the program to them. I was thinking I was going to have a little bit more time on that.
How have you found the reception?
For the most part, pretty good. There's the more of the mom and pop shops, they're really concerned about the money and the cost of the program itself. So when I'm starting to talk about there's a potential cost in the program, that's when I get the negative feedback back. But most of all, they're all willing to do it. I do have probably a list of about 3 right now that just want no part of this and me, with it right now. So I'm just going to hold off on them and see, maybe write a letter or something like that. But for the most part, it's being received well. The down is on it is when I talk about the fee itself. And you can see the average meeting time, it takes about 35 minutes to talk to them, but I've spent up to an hour and a half with one facility just to kind of go in and answer all the questions and so on.
So you're lucky if you get 5 restaurants a day.
That's pretty much what I get, yes.
Pretty lucky.
Between 5 to 8 a day. Yeah. And then I'm thinking, like I said, I got probably 40 to 45 more, so I'm thinking November is going to be the completion date on it, is what I'm hoping for itself. And then after that point, I'll probably still have maybe 4 or 5 I got to work on to introduce in the program and don't want no part of it. But then I can start my inspections itself, get some time on how much it's going to take me to do an inspection, and give the feedback back to you guys. Any questions? I'd be happy to
Mr.
answer.
Hernandez.
Primarily, the inspection is to see that their grease traps are working clean, whatever oils, fats are being taken, where to. And
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So we'll be asking, we're actually asking for invoices. So when they get the oil picked up, we're asking for invoices, a documentation of that. When the grease interceptor or trap gets clean, we're asking for invoices of that. There's certain kitchen BMPs, making sure they have screens, and the floor drains, making sure they have that. So the inspection will be part of that. Making sure they have a trash can in back where they're scraping all the food and fats, oils, and grease into the trash can and so on. Yeah.
Any question? Go right ahead.
Thanks, Corey. Definitely a worthy cause, and I appreciate the hard work. I wasn't here in December when this was passed, but when you mentioned the fees, what's the dollar amount ballpark? And
That being settled on fee.
it's not settled yet? Okay.
No, not at all.
We had an estimate in the ordinance.
Mhm.
We just didn't implement that piece of it.
What was the estimate?
The estimate was $21 a month, came out to $252 a year. And that was an average. What it was is I looked at 15 other agencies out there that have this program and took an average from that point right there.
Okay. And
But
is
the
it,
board was not comfortable at that time making a decision on that. We wanted to see how the program rolled and then see how we wanted to pay for it.
okay,
Left kind of open, I thought.
okay, great. And it's $21 for everyone regardless the size of their restaurant or
You know what, that's
the
what I'm-
amount of grease that they're producing?
Actually, that's a good point. That I have a list of about 15, 14 right now that are low producers that still should be in the program, but the inspection time is going to be next to nothing. Talk to other agencies that already have this program intact that's had it established for years, and they kind of charge everybody the same thing. But I'm kind of looking at it. If it's taking me 20 minutes to do an inspection somewhere and a half hour worth of paperwork, is it should they get charged the same as as a higher producer, that takes me maybe 3 hours. So I'm putting a list together and I'm gonna turn it into my supervisor and management and kind of go from that point. Because there's like small deli shops, you know, that still produce a small amount of grease, 7-Elevens and so on, that are part of the program. They should be, you know, just in case something changes, we can have documentation of it, but they're very low producer, you know, so inspection time is gonna be next to nothing on that.
That's why we delayed. We wanted to get the actual times and see if it would be a tiered thing.
Okay, so this is gonna come back to
Oh,
us
yeah.
at some point?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's part of the recommendation. We're still recommending to hold the fees. I'll get you a copy of the ordinance though, so you can
Okay.
review.
Thank you. Thanks.
That,
Director Lynch?
go ahead.
No, I think Jim's probably gonna ask for my ask.
Director Polly?
I'm gonna ask what you're gonna.
Just acknowledge and
I have
ask.
this thing going on.
What was just asked of you by Mike was, does that relate to the strength of study report you're doing as well? So that, obviously, those who are putting more strain on the system than others. they would
It
be
is,
more
and what we're
accountable.
hoping is, part of the whole concept is, if we can control the grease, the fats, oil, and greases at the source,
Yeah.
because the strength of sewage and charging is a separate issue. One is the cost of service nexus, so we're charging appropriately for your impact. What we're hoping, that's why Corey's doing that separate study on strength of sewage from those 20 or however many
25
places he's
locations.
looking, is if, if we can control the source of the grease, which changes the strength of the sewage, if it's not coming into the sewer, then we don't have to get into the nuts and bolts of trying to develop fees for this type of use versus this type of use versus this type. So if we can control it at the source and just keep it from even hitting the sewer, then we don't have to worry about developing a strength-based
Right.
program. So they're tied together, but not exactly. They're tied together by virtue, if we can eliminate the source, we may not have to develop the other program. But we're doing them in concert just to make sure.
Great. How often are you requiring them to service their grease trap or their separators?
In the ordinance itself,
Interceptors.
it's, a grease interceptor is a bigger device that
Yeah.
captures the grease and oils and solids. That's in the ordinance every 3 months, and the smaller grease trap is actually every month on there. But what it is through the other agencies that I interviewed and talked to, it's called the 25% rule. So I'm gonna more go towards the 25% rule, because if they're doing all their kitchen BMPs and they're doing what they need to do, they're producing less grease. So as long as it's under that 25%, I had it on the last slide, I talked about it, is if your hydraulic depth of that grease trap is 4 feet in level, and you have a half a foot on fog on top, and you have a foot of solids on the bottom, you add those two together, so you have 1.5 feet of grease and solids, you divide it times 4, and that gives you 37%, that's too full, so it would need to be clean. And that's a standard 25% rule throughout the agencies that have this program. So I think I'm gonna look at that more, because if somebody's doing what they need to do, they can possibly go 4 months or 5 months, as long as they're under that 25% rule. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now, even though in the ordinance it says every 3 months, but it also says the 25% rule in there too.
Good.
So it could be a savings if they're doing, their kitchen BMPs doing what they need to do, as long as they keep it under that 25%, then they can expand that 3 months to 4 months or 4.5 months, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that due to the actions you're taking and just the recycle effect that this is having, kind of what's happening right now in Cena as far as what they're doing with their solids, making fertilizer and actually making a commercial product. By the success in your program, you should be lessening the strength of the sewage that's going down, and also by having the production of the biomaterial that they can take down, maybe take down to Encinas and use that as a combustible, because right now I think they're 75% self-sufficient. All those things add to us paying less to treat sewage, which thereby is less to the customer. So while there is a permit cost, some of that nexus is part of it.
And that's part of what we're gonna look at, because theoretically, the more grease we take, the more power we generate, the less we have to buy from SDG&E.
Right.
Which means it reduces, we're 20.5% of Encina now. So we share big time in the savings of any operating costs of Encina by doing it here.
Yeah.
So we get the cost savings on the back end, And again, we adopted the ordinance with the theory in mind of recovering fees, but once we get through it, if it proves out we are recovering fees,
Right.
we're good.
Thanks, good job.
Director Evans?
Well, you didn't ask exactly, but it was very close. And the bottom line is, after hearing the questions and answers, is I'm very pleased that we're taking a proactive approach in trying to stop it at the source. I think that's really important. And I like that there's possibilities that if we're successful at it, we won't have to have a huge fee. And I especially like your idea of the 25% rule and also the less users. I had a lot of questions about low producers. You pretty much answered that. So I'm really going to look forward to what you find. As a final question, as you've gone out, has the response been what you expected or a little better?
You know, for
Or
the most part,
things-
it's been better, actually. It's been better.
How's
Most
that?
of them, like you said, most places are supportive of the program and saying, happy that we're doing it and so on. So they don't like the more time to do the paperwork and keep track of stuff like that, but they think it's a great idea. Yes, they do.
And have you spoken with them on a random basis, or have you gone to maybe the worst offenders first? or-
No, I pretty much started at one end of the district, and I'm working my way all the way through the district itself. So I just started up over there by Nordall, by 78 Nordall right there, and just working my way through the district itself. And like you said, for the most part, it's definitely a positive feedback. It's just the time consuming of the paperwork and stuff like that. And I'm looking at the way I wrote it to possibly changing some things to make it easier on the facility itself. So
And
they're
are
not keeping
you-
so much paperwork like that.
Are you training a backup person? Someday you're gonna wanna retire. and
I
how are you
have,
gonna
actually, we
retire?
have a job shadowing program, and there's 2 people that are interested, so, yeah, as soon as I get the program up and running, where to do some inspections and so on. then we'll have
Good.
them.
I think
So
it's-
it's definitely moving forward, for
I
sure.
think it's excellent, thank you.
He just has gray hair, he's actually still pretty young.
I know, I was gonna say, the silver tsunami's gonna be here.
Any other questions from the board? I have one, statement one, and maybe I'm getting old, so maybe I've forgotten, but I thought one of the reasons that we tabled fees was because we wanted to see what the reality would be. But my understanding is there's some jurisdictions that don't charge an additional fee. And there's some jurisdictions that are already doing this FOG program.
Yes, sir.
We're not on the
Yes.
cutting edge,
Yes, you're right, yes.
not creating a new wheel. It's been done. And you're looking at it for our vicinity though, so
Yes.
that's fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's just a note and file, no action recorded.
Note file. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
Thank you,
report.
Corey.
Thanks.
Great report. Okay, now we're gonna move to 2.3, approval of final acceptance of water and sewer improvements for Parkview Apartments.
Mr. Gertis.
Thank you. What hair I do have is gray, and I am old.
And you are retiring
Oh,
soon.
there went my illusion.
Yeah. Director Martin, or President Martin, Board of Directors, this item's final acceptance of water and sewer improvements for Parkview project, Parkview Apartments. It's located on Autumn Drive, where Chinaberry Lane used to be as private road. This is the last of the newer redevelopment projects that are going on down there. I think everything's either been redeveloped, ripped down and redeveloped, or redone in a couple instances. This project constructed about 1,100 feet of water main through their site from Autumn Drive down to the south to near Westlake, and also hooked up to the old sewer that we used to have there. And the interesting thing was it was there, it's been there since the 60s, and we had no recorded easement, but we maintained it all the time. It only feeds that particular area, and the developer asked that it was okay if they didn't put a new one in and take that one over as a private line. So we had to televise it, make sure everything is okay, and after we approve this, we're gonna quit claim any rights that we may have had to that sewer line or the land that's there. This will, upon acceptance, this will be 84 affordable housing residential units and some commercial space underneath. Water, wastewater, and sewer impact fees have been paid, and there's a cash deposit amount of $11,591 for their 1-year warranty. The beginning of the project, we worked with the developer and their contractor, put up the materials and performance and payment bond for the construction. And at the end here, this is 1 year. The $11,000 represents 25% of the cost of the water main installation. Recommendation, we recommend that the board accept the project and authorize filing a notice of completion. Have any questions? Yeah,
Any questions? No?
I move we accept staff recommendation.
And I would just like to say one thing about it. This is Ginger Heinske's project, right? Somebody here?
In the back? Yes.
Is that Ginger back there?
Yep.
Hey, Ginger.
Hey,
I was
I
gonna-
know.
Now I'm afraid to say it, but I was gonna say, I was by the day, what an awesome project. I mean, you can't be prouder of what she's done over there. It's great. So, thank you. Roll call, please.
Ralph Cravens?
Yes.
Justin Hernandez?
Yes.
Jennifer Walls?
Yes.
Doug Christine?
Yes.
Joe DeMare?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, drought update and recommended action.
Well, we can approach this in two ways. The board can just say yes,
Okay.
or I can have Tom get up and talk to you about,
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
so you know,
Yes.
I recommend
Yeah.
approval.
you know.
Second.
Fine with me.
Tom, can you keep it short?
I can keep it short if you like.
You have before you, Directors, President Martin, members of the board, starting on page 33, a memo on a drought update and also a recommendation to go to response level 2, drought alert condition of our ordinance. Just a brief update of where we are and how we got here. On January 17th, the Governor of California, Governor Brown, declared an emergency and asked for more conservation. Following that, the Water Authority on February 13th declared a level 1 drought response, which is voluntary, and our board followed shortly after that on the 19th with the level 1 also. On the top of the memo, you see 7 items there, those that are enumerated, that are the voluntary conservation practices of level 1. If we do go to level 2, those become mandatory. On July 15th, the State Water Resources Control Board, question?
It's actually, could you ask IT to come in? My thing's just doing nothing.
Your monitor?
My iPad is doing nothing. This one is, but I don't have anything to refer to on the agenda. Do you mind? I'm sorry, Tom.
Oh, no worries.
I know you were racing
There's nothing exciting
Would you like to
to
share?
show you yet.
a little bit, but,
You don't
We
have
got plenty of
you have
time. It's just
sharing
Dennis in a
problem?
rush.
Here, you can take it all.
Go for
We
it.
got all night.
I just want IT. I've written a couple questions on it.
Oh, okay, oh, you had, oh, written.
Highlighted a couple things.
Oh, you have a use for it then.
I do. I'm sorry, but you can go on. I
Okay,
just,
thank you.
Please do.
On July 15th, the State Water Resources Control Board, now empowered for the first time, they actually had authority to issue regulations, and they did so, emergency conservation regulations. And following that, on the 24th of July, the San Diego County Water Authority Board met and moved to a level 2. Our ordinance for our drought response program is predicated on the Water Authority. If they move to level 2 and notify us of a reduction requirement, then we would move to level 2 and bring it to our board for action. That's what we're doing here today. The state water resources regulations and San Diego County Water Authority, neither of them call for a specific percentage reduction on air like it was. It's a little bit different. We'll talk about that later for compared to the last drought, other than just a reduction in there. State Water Resources Control Board really broke up their regulations in 2 sections. One was for consumers. The other one was for agencies, for water suppliers. Basically, the underlying theme of it is every agency in California should be at some mandated level of conservation. And it's really set up for if your agency doesn't have a means of mandated water use restrictions, then they fall back to the specifics of the State Water Resources Control Board regulations, so there's specific things for water users. You don't have to comply exactly with those as long as you have your own mandated level of conservation and it achieves similar results. So in other words, for example, they have 2 days, a limit of 2 days of watering per week. Our ordinance has 3, and that's fine. It's in the spirit of conservation and getting there. That's the underlying theme of these regs. They went into effect on August 1st, but they also acknowledge that agencies need time to present to their board like we're doing today. So it's not an issue that, we don't have it mandated yet. Just about every agency in August or meeting this month to move to level 2. On the middle of page 34 of your packet, you see some of the level 2 drought alert. If we go to level 2 drought alert, what does that mean specifically? No more than 3 days of watering per week. The ordinance actually says assigned, but we're just going to say 3 days and see how it goes for now. 10 minutes per water station, and that's an exemption if you have drip irrigation or roto irrigation. You're not limited to that 10 minutes. Irrigating before 10 in the morning, after 10 at night only, using hose with an automatic shutoff nozzle for if you don't have automatic sprinklers and you're irrigating that way. 72 hours to fix a leak notification. And then fountains, as long as it's recirculated water, is fine, but no more water features that don't use recycled water. And then the voluntary actions, like I mentioned before, that were in level 1 become mandatory, like watching out for the overspray of your sprinklers. It has to be on targeted areas only, no water runoff, and things of that nature. The ordinance does call for fines too of $100 for violation. On the onset, what we'll be doing, we'll have a standing board agenda item to monitor the drought and see how things go. And I think from what we've had from other agencies, right off the bat, they probably will not be assessing fees at this time or drought rates as well. We do have a series of things we will be doing right off the bat if level 2 is declared. And I just want to share a couple of those things with you as well, and what we might do if we don't achieve conservation that we're looking for. But we had last drought these big banners. One was on the fence out here, so we're going to do that again with the banners. We're working with the city of San Marcos, hopefully to get a permit to hang one on Mission Avenue Bridge. Our trucks had these magnetic signs. Most of them have to be replaced, but we'll be replacing those magnetic signs about conservation as well. There's a press release. You should have had one on your desk today where you sat down, that if we go to level 2, that will be released. And there'll be an announcement on our website, on Twitter and Facebook. City of San Marcos has been wonderful working with us, and they will also post on their website as well. We have handouts. I think you had a copy of one of the handouts that would be a stack in customer service, a stack in the lobby, a stack of them in the engineering department, a stack over at the city, Chamber of Commerce, the library, senior center, so they'll be all over as well. You know already about the August 27th, the fire landscape co-sponsored seminar that's going to happen as well, city and water district. Articles will be placed online as well on the San Marcos 360 and in our splash, so we'll keep the message out there. But we're already getting calls of neighbors telling on neighbors, and that's wonderful, and that'll pick up too if the drought 2 is declared as well. So we're responding to those. We're keeping track of all the information that comes in regarding those calls as well. Door hangers, we'll have a door hanger. I've already said we're going to deputize every Vallecitos employee with the door hangers, and with a perforation that comes off, they give it to Lisa or a conservation department to say we hung a door hanger because we saw somebody, for example, sprinkling their lawn at 12 noon or something like that. Those will also give those to the city as well as the handouts too. So there'll be a lot of door hangers out there. And then public service announcements. The Aqua has already done quite a few public service announcements, and we'll get
those on San Marcos Television also. And water-wise landscape classes coming up, H2O to HOA, and that's something we're working cooperatively with the city on to present that to target HOAs and hopefully save there. Restaurants may be another target as well to see how we can help them conserve water. And we've already isolated about 160 of the top users in the district, the users that are consistently in the highest tier of usage. We'll send them a letter specifically, seeing how we can help them conserve as well, and letting them know about the mandates of the drought. Beyond that, like I said, we'll be monitoring. If that doesn't work, we have other steps in the process. Like I said, we don't intend to fine right away, but if we monitor and see that we're not achieving conservation, that's a tool we have to get a little bit more aggressive on that. Also, the drought rates, and we have drought rates adopted. And what I mentioned before, what's very different about this drought than previous drought, the previous drought in 2009, the Water Authority actually gave us an amount of acre feet and said, you're limited to this amount of acre feet. So it was easy to calculate a percentage and say, okay, this is the percentage we have to reduce by. And our drought rates are predicated on a specific reduction amount. So there's pros and cons to doing the drought rates now. There's pros and cons to holding off on drought rates. One of the benefits of doing drought rates now is that it's in the press now. We get this free outreach basically to do it now. Also, we're going to be incurring costs. We're hiring additional staff to handle all the influx of calls and the conservation effort. So there's costs we would incur that would be covered by the higher tiers. The downside to doing it now is we might be the only agency that would do it now. So it doesn't look like any agency will be moving to drought rates, and plus we don't have that definitive percentage reduction amount to do it on. In our ordinance, there's a 20 and a 40% level, and then anything in between, we prorate to that level. So we adjust the actual level of reduction there. So the benefit of waiting is we'll wait and see, do we need, plus we have reserves now in our water replacement fund, not to the target that we'd like to see them, but projecting ahead. We're projecting at the end of this fiscal year, we won't have rate stabilization money, but we'll be close to that ceiling, less the deficit that we're covering in the capacity funds. But it's possible we would have, the way we're projecting now, rate stabilization money in fiscal year 2015, 2016. Now, some of that could be used in lieu of the higher tiers to fund our efforts on conservation. We are tracking those expenses too. We have separate work orders to track those expenses. So, the benefit of waiting, well, let's wait and see, are we going to achieve that? Like last drought, we achieved a lot of conservation right off the bat just by customers conserving, knowing that because of the outreach and all publicity about the drought. I do have a drought rate calculator. Obviously, we're not going to put that online. We don't want to confuse people and think that that's that these are in effect, but we do have a drought rate calculator to show what that impact would be. There's no impact at all if you use 11 units or less. You're not impacted at all from drought rates.
Per month?
What's that? Per month?
Yes. Yeah, 11 units per month. And then from 11 to 17, very small impact. It's meant to hit the higher users. Yes, Dr. Martin.
Let me ask a question. I'm assuming you had to have a 218 hearing on this?
Yes, and we did. They were included in our.
Was that in our last one? Did we show a drought?
That was
in our last one?
October.
Yeah.
That was October last year.
But we showed what the drought would be if we went to drought conditions
Yes.
as well?
Yeah, in our ordinance,
We had two structures in there, one with and one without,
Yeah.
just in case.
They're multiples of the tier 2 rate.
Great.
Tiers are. Yeah. Dennis, did you?
Yeah, I just want to throw a few more things in before the board starts talking about this. I did pass out to you or sent you an email, just kind of a general status of what can take place. It's pretty good up till you get to the part where it says future potential actions, and that's where things can kind of go sideways very quickly. The intent of this, as I noted in my email, is we'll have this at the engineering counter. Anybody that walks in the door is going to get a copy of it. Anybody that's developing, building, or is even remotely touching anything of ours, we're gonna give it to them now. There's no impact right now, but you can see the 3 ordinances we have, or 2 ordinances, 1 resolution, they all dovetail into each other. So when things happen, they can happen pretty quickly. And that's, if you could put the slides up in. And this is not intended to reflect badly on Metropolitan Water District or anybody else. This is just something that can show how quickly things can happen. Even back in the 92, where we hit the March miracle, in stage 1 was November of 1990, and it was a very small cutback. We got into December of 1990, went to stage 2. January 5th, we were in stage 3. So in a matter of literally a month and 16 days, we went from 10% to, I think it was 20%, in a very quick fashion. And that was going through the rainy season. Because the issue is, you gotta remember, our rain season is October through March. That's our wet period. We're in the driest we've had. You've seen all the stuff. And again, I'm not trying to reflect badly on Met. They've done a lot of good planning as well. But it can be things that suddenly go out of your control. We only got 5%, we being Met, only got a 5% allocation from the state this year. But the eastern Sierras were above average in rainfall and snowpack. So they pulled their full allocation from the Colorado River Aqueduct. I think it's 450 or 500,000 acre feet. Well, you can imagine we go into the rainy season, suddenly the east side of the Sierras is not where it should be. So what they thought might be their 500,000 acre feet, they might all of a sudden be getting 200 or 300. So that's why you can see these things suddenly happen quickly. Even though there's good planning, there's things that just go out of control. Then you can see we went from January 5th to February 12th. We didn't even hit the stage 4. They didn't even have a stage 5 or 6 in their policy. They were meeting that quickly. They skipped stage 4, went straight within a month to 31%. These are the overall reductions. So when you hit the 50%, that suddenly got, they say where they added a stage 6, that didn't even exist. The actual reductions were 70+% to ag and 35% to domestic. Ag was cut off. Period. And if you had that interruptible ag rate, you'd already been cut off. You weren't getting water. So you can see just how quickly, so you figure November through March, 4 months, we went from voluntary to oh no. So this is just indicative of where we can be going. I think I spoke at the last meeting. Met is projecting to pull 1 million acre feet out of storage, what they have right now. This year they pulled 1 million out. They used 500,000 from Colorado River. If we don't get a wet year, they'll end up, I think, with 1.8 million or 1.7 million acre feet, give or take. And if they have to, and they're projecting sales of 1.9. So if they get 500,000 from Colorado River, that means they need another 1.3. They could have groundwater bank. They've got water stored all over. They got water in Phoenix in the ground. So there's water everywhere, but you could be sitting here come March after the rainy season, and we could suddenly be doing one of these dances. So this is just so the board understands. It's not necessarily just the rainfall. You've seen Director Hernandez is on the groundwater committee. The groundwater in the Central Valley, these people they've pulled it down to where they're not getting water now. So they're trying to get back on. Some are now pulling their preferential rights that they've given up. Now they want it back. It's going to be all over the place for the next 6 months. This again, I said, not to say it's going to happen. This just goes to show how quickly it can go from 20% to the level 3. And if you read policy, the policy is included in the board packet. When you get to level 3, everything stops.
Yeah.
Period. So unless you've paid the water authority fee, unless you paid our fee, and you have a valid building permit, sorry.
Question. Is there a way of projecting what the possibilities of that are, so that you as a ratepayer and developer builder, you're looking out there and go, well, but you look at this and you go, 30 days, you might be out of luck.
I think Director Evans probably ordered her crystal ball. Being down there as our rep on the water authority. Metropolitan started, I think it was last month. They've started their planning sessions for what could happen. So they'll look at all the different scenarios, less Colorado River water, more State Water Project water. They have spot water meaning we've bought water when it was wet, put it in the ground like Arvin Edison out in the middle of Central Valley. We then pay, pump it back out and bring it down. But that's a very extremely expensive water to do that. So they're going through their planning scenarios right now. I think they figured that was gonna take them 3 months, give or take. The director should probably clarify that. But they're gonna look at all the alternatives, but what I understand from the last meeting, and I heard with the planning people, they're not gonna go back to their board to make a decision until March or April of next year.
Oh,
They're very slow to get excited and slow to move. And I think I mentioned to you a couple meetings back that they were saying, we're gonna be fine because we're gonna count on 55% of our allocations for the next year. After a year, we barely got the 5%. They just don't take it seriously as policymakers for some reason. So we're gonna kind of be second guessing ourselves through this whole process.
Yeah.
And that's why we had districts.
Doing their own planning.
well, I guess that was my point. In March, 70 days, that's, a year from now. If I'm a developer, I got plenty of time. But does the Water Authority have the ability to make that decision to move to a 3
Sure.
by themselves?
Sure.
And I just heard you are doing some planning with the Water Authority?
Right, do you remember, I know several districts, and I think Livenhang was one of them, that wanted to step forward and go to a level 2 before everybody else anyway.
Mhm.
And they were kind of being careful that they didn't step on toes, because just like if we decide to go to the mandatory rate to control it, a lot of districts aren't looking at it quite yet, and it's always good if you're all in sync.
Mhm.
But I did notice that Livenhang has a meeting in a week or two, and on their agenda, they have listed, a mandatory price changes and
They're gonna look at the tier structure.
the
their
peer
tiers.
structure.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about whether
Yeah.
they want to do it, and also to limit water meters.
Yeah.
So they're stepping up fairly quickly, at
Well,
least
what-
to discuss it. I don't know that they'll.
Yeah, what
decide.
happened was you may recall, we had the Water Authority issued, way back when, they had what do they call it?
The drought template?
Template for the drought response plan, the model ordinance, think. And everybody kind of used it. The intent of the model ordinance was so you didn't have 26 agencies doing this down here. Politically, if you haven't figured out what the governor's trying to do is basically say, please make it mandatory. So everybody is mandatory. You've got people in Northern California that are 50%. They don't have water. They're having to buy water from neighbors because their wells are dry. Southern California is in better shape because of the Colorado River Aqueduct, plain and simple, and there's been a lot of facilities built. But when you get to the end of a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 year drought, if there's no water to put in the facility, it doesn't really matter what you build, there's no water. So the model ordinance was kind of adopted by everybody. Some have in the level 2, no more meters. Some have it in 3. I think Rincon might be in level 2. Okay, well, they've got an 800 unit subdivision going right in the middle of their district right now.
Mhm.
So if their board this month adopts a level 2, I'd rather they do it first and not us, to be perfectly honest. So it can have a huge impact. So a lot of them are going back this month, modifying their existing ordinances to accommodate what we're going through, because it didn't really anticipate the circumstances we're in. We're in pretty good shape because we adopted the Model 1. We kept limitations further up, but we don't have any really big hits until we get to level 3.
Yeah.
The other farm that I'm afraid of is you got to realize it's not now. And let me go back where Tom mentioned that the State Water Resources Board now had the right and the authority to enact rules and regulations. Remember, that changed this past year where they took water out under the California Department of Public Health and they stuck it under the State Water Resources Control Board because they have the teeth, Health Department didn't, so they now can write rules. Well, guess what? They're not bashful, they did it. That's why in my memo I sent to you is it could be the state, it could be the State Water Resources Control Board who suddenly says, we don't care how much water you have in storage, you got to go to 40% now. So it could be people beyond the wholesale suppliers. That's why I say it's not just in Met's backyard to make this decision. They could be told as well as all of us, no, you're gonna go to 30% mandatory now.
And that would push us to 3.
Most likely, that would push us up into 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it goes over 20. So there's a whole, that's the whole thing I was just trying to give you some flavor for. There's a lot of pieces moving right now, and unfortunately, we don't control a single one of them.
And when it happens, it's not like traditionally, when we raise our rates.
No,
on
they don't get
everything,
60
we only
days.
30 days out of there, it's today.
When you adopt, it's effective.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And my understanding is, once you pass that, you go to level 4, 5, and 6, all bets are off.
All bets are off on anything.
Doesn't matter if you've paid your fees to everybody in the universe.
Yeah. That's why at 3, we're saying at 3, they're trying to give a grace period to the few that are out there and they've already spent the money and they're building. You go to 4, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what's going on. It's not gonna happen.
Well, I'm sorry, but I misunderstood that then. If you've paid your fees.
And a building permit.
And a building permit, and it goes to 4, I mean, you're.
You're gonna be under that
Yeah.
realm, you're gonna be okay.
Probably.
Probably. No guarantee.
Unless you're hooked up.
Probably. Unless you're hooked up, they may say there's no meter in the ground, you're not pulling water. Tough.
Because what happens is, there's a real hue and cry about, wait a minute, you're telling us we can't
Right.
water anything.
And you're paying more house.
still hooking up properties for new development. Gets to be a real problem. And when this happened with a very large developer in the 80s, that we were building some huge developments in San Marcos and Escondido that we served, and there were different phases, and they were sending us very large checks for payment of securing their capacity fee rights. And we got to the point where it looked like we were really it was gonna get very, very serious. And each of our development agreements have a provision in them that say
That's on page 4 at the bottom.
that, if we get into a drought emergency, we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to provide service to your new homes. And there was some interesting discussions with the lawyers in Los Angeles that were saying that their clients were having a bit of a hard time when they were trying to explain this to them, because they had just paid not only obviously fees to the city, fees, a lot was on the line, and it was very, very difficult for them. But that's the reality. When this comes down and they, start mandating these things, unless you're in the system, frankly, you may have some problems. And you'll notice that the State Water Resources Control Board, their issuance was a 2-day watering limit or other measures. And the Water Authority picked up on that. I think they're 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's what they're suggesting. But, there are conflicts between each of these agencies that are mandating these things to some extent.
Well, the trick was with the state, what they said was if you don't have a drought management plan in place, you have to use our rules. That was the 2-day. However, if you do have a drought management plan in place, you can use your own, and that's what Jeff's just referring to. We have it, so it can happen. But, yeah, that's where it's coming down to, Jim. If it hits, and it can hit that fast, like I said, that's not trying to say it could, but there's so many pieces now, and the new wild card is the fact that the State Resources Control Board, you gotta remember, they gave us this regulation on July 5th, and they implemented it on the 18th.
15th.
15th. So they went from nothing to a new law and accepted and adopted in 10 days. When they want to get something done, they can.
Yeah.
So these were just, like Tom said, there is a press release. The other thing I've done is I've spoken to, no, I'm good with just those. I've spoken to the city manager, well, we've been playing phone tag and email tag about other ways we can work together, not to put the city employees in a role of water cop, but to have them with the same information, so if they see it, they note it, they can just then contact us to where we work with them. So I'll be meeting with them week after next. Again, that was just my 2 cents on this, just to show how fast something can happen if we move forward.
Yes, sir, Director Poto.
Well, congratulations on the good planning. At least we seem to be pretty good with our reserves at this time, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
But we're going to get caught sooner or later, and because what we're asking for is conservation. And when you ask for conservation, then our costs go up because our revenue goes down. So at some point, we're going to be looking at that. And also, you talked about the drought rate and so on. Sometimes the rate is what really affects people to use gas. And so it's going to depend on what happens as to where we go with, as a board with our decisions. And none of them are going to be too easy to do, but that's life, and that's what's going to happen. So I was thinking about when you were talking about the city and so on, have you thought about maybe having some sort of drought signs or conserve water signs that the city could use on their vehicles, and possibly the school district as well? If you thought it was a good investment, doesn't really need to say anything about Vallecitos, it could just say something about conserve water, getting that word out there, because both entities have a lot of vehicles that drive around the district all the time, and it might be worth thinking
Okay.
about. So, and I think that's all I got.
Director Evans?
Thank you. I'm wondering, is that something the school district can do as well? Is there a way for the school district to advertise conserving?
That's what he said.
That's kind of what
Oh,
I
I
was
thought you said
suggesting.
city.
And the school district.
And the school district,
And see,
right.
maybe some sort of magnetic signs or something that would just stress the idea of
I'm sorry, I just
conservation.
missed that point. And this question, I think, might be for Jeff. I was under the understanding that this level 2 that the state's declared is effective for 270 days, regardless if we have a multiple downpours. Is that my understanding, that it's been set? And this is the first time the state's ever done a statewide declaration.
Yep.
So we're just, like Dennis was saying, we're in really volatile territory. But I think that's important for people to understand too. This is long-term and not the first lovely rainfall or two is gonna end it.
Well, they left the provision in there, was 270 or 290 days, but they left themselves the leeway, of course, to extend it,
Of course.
but also to rescind it.
Oh, I didn't read that
Yeah,
part.
they did have, they did give themselves the flexibility to rescind it if circumstances change.
Thank you.
Director Sinella?
To piggyback on Director Pohl's comments there regarding increased conservation could lead to decreased revenue. Tom, you had mentioned in your presentation to us that you may have to hire additional human resources to answer phones and to enforce this. Do you know how many folks will be hired as a result yet?
Not yet, it's, at least one right off the bat, but we'll have to just wait and see the call volume and how we can handle it with our staff that we have now. But it's a.
I think two points with regards to that. If we're gonna see increased conservation and decreased revenue, it just really puts a spotlight on how the necessity to operate as efficiently as possible. And as a board member, I'll speak for myself, if I had some comprehensive metrics to look at as to how many phone calls we're currently getting and perhaps be able to identify if there's any increases, that'd be helpful in making those decisions with a mindset of that we need to operate as efficiently as possible, given the fact that we may be losing revenue.
Yeah.
It may not be the best time to be adding staff.
Yeah, and also at one, I said we'd have a standing board item. We can also add in not just monitoring what our water usage, but monitoring what's happening to reserves too in our water.
It'd be a bi-weekly,
Thanks.
you're gonna get a report on calls, how much it's cost us, how much we've saved, or the whole ball of wax.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just mention one other thing. San Marcos has a group of people called the Sheriff's Volunteers, and they're generally retired. But they drive around in white vehicles all day long, and they actually give out handicap parking tickets. But they could be a resource for a couple of things, just as a volunteer resource, so we're not spending money. And their vehicles, you can put signs on. I know you can't on the sheriff's, but you certainly could on the sheriff's volunteers. So just a thought.
Okay, look into that too.
That's a resource that's out there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, the more we can get without spending money to do it, same as like I said,
Yeah.
I sent Jack a email because the city's got, like you say, just as many vehicles out there as we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And not necessarily put them in the role of enforcement or speaking to people, but if they're driving down the street and they see water running, all those kind of things, then they can just make note of it, contact Lisa or whomever, then that's just one more person to be able to follow up.
Especially if it's their water that's running.
Well, I hate
We
to,
all see it.
before we issue the list of the top 150 users, we'll make contact with the city. to let them know that they're in there quite a few times.
That's a bunch of pipes that Ken put in years ago, though. So
All leaking. So,
Okay, we got that.
Just one kind of funny point, but to that point, I don't know if the enforcement piece is gonna be so difficult to accomplish. I've already seen on Twitter last night, matter of fact, as I was reading it, that there's people reporting their HOA. So any given neighborhood, if you have hundreds of people living in a neighborhood, 30, 40, 50,
All on the
sometimes
same one.
90% of them hate the HOA anyways, so they're looking at a way to get them. And in this particular case, what was so funny about this is this person had reported it to the same 10 News reporter that we were dealing with. So it's not only just they're reporting it to a government agency, they're actually going and taking it to the media.
yeah, this is an opportunity, and you'd be amazed some of the phone call the customer service representatives get, but you start seeing people get very, very vindictive towards things. It's pretty funny. And they're actually posting pictures on Twitter and Facebook and everything else for people doing it. So with that, what we're asking a direction from the board is to declare a level 2 drought alert.
Okay, we do have one speaker.
Oh,
The speaker is Michael Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. Mr. Lamb has raised an interesting point that our reserves are not really under our control. We're at the mercy of outside events. Considering the deepening drought and the concern that many scientists have about a really long drought, I think it is important to get some reserves under our control. Now, one of the things that has been considered is the reservoir for reclaimed water. I think that plus much expansion as we can get. I think it was South Lake was one consideration that was going forward. And it's apparently being limited by some park considerations. I think that should be explored if it exists, and to expand that capacity as much as we can. Secondly, we have the desalinized water under contract. That should be water completely under our control, and it should remain under our control, and it should remain as reserves. We should not put ourselves into a bigger and bigger water shortage hole by unrestrained development. And we are scheduled under SANDAG's population projections, and even required to accept probably a much larger amount of population than we can support. This is also a big problem with the Newland project that's going up. I believe the last time that was shot down was because we couldn't guarantee water supplies. Well, they're proceeding as if they're going to get a approval. I think that this needs to be considered very carefully as to what we're allowing as far as future projections, and the comments about unhappiness of people who conserve and then find that big developments are going in, just as they're asked being conserved, is a political and practical problem to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I like your idea about the volunteer police.
Thank you. Okay, need a motion and a second?
So moved.
second?
Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
All right, next is 2.5, Sewer System Management Plan Update.
This is something that the board will have the luxury of hearing about every 5 years. I'll have Mr. Janis introduce himself and walk you through it, but it's kind of, in a nutshell, this was never used to be looked at or considered by boards. It was always something down at the staff level. And the reason this came about is the state and other regulatory agencies got tired of hearing when there was a sewer spill that the board or city council didn't know it because staff didn't tell them. So really what they finally said, okay, fine, there's a new plan we're gonna make you adopt, and the public agency's governing body has to adopt it. That way they know what's available. And so it's something that comes back every 5 years, and I'll have, like I said, Jerome introduce himself and what he does, and then give you the highlights of this. If you want to get into the nuts and bolts, be happy to answer it, but it's a pretty dry subject.
Highlights sound good.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerome. Take it away.
Good afternoon, President Martin, members of the board. My name is Jerome Janis. I'm the District Risk Management Supervisor. And for you is the Sewer System Management Plan update. In accordance with the statewide regulations, the district is required to bring before the board every 5 years the update to the Sewer System Management Program. In this case, there was only two changes, major changes. One is just, first one is the addition of, or change of our mission statement, and the new mission statement that's in the Sewer System Management Plan is the one that was adopted by, from the strategic plan. And the second thing was just the addition of the FOG, FSE, or FOG, Food Service Establishment Inspection Program. And other than that, there is no other major changes to the SSMP that was adopted in 2009 by the Board of Directors. So it's staff recommendation that you adopt the updated SSMP.
Questions from the board?
Move to adopt.
Director Sinella had a question, I'm sorry.
Just, is the new mission statement not to spill sewage? Don't spill sewage, or what's the new mission statement? I know it's probably in one of these 40 pages here, but you can save me some time.
No, it's, yeah, I can read it real quick.
It is, I just had it.
Water specialists.
To provide exceptional water. Provide exceptional sustainable services. Dang, almost had it. That was
And
exceptional.
don't spill sewage.
The previous one was really long.
The previous one was about 2 paragraphs. We do it in a cost-effective, environmentally
Said the same
sound,
thing.
yada, yada,
That was
yada.
a board idea.
If, in a nutshell, Director Sinella, if you go to page 3 of 10, that's page 47, those are the key things that the board has to have in there. And we actually, before this was adopted, we used to have, it was a sanitary sewer overflow response plan. So it was a SORP. Back then, it was a SORP. And what we had already adopted was how we respond, how we fund facilities and everything else. We already actually had one in place. The state finally came around and said, okay, we need a statewide standard so everybody does it. San Diego County was actually ahead of the rest of the state because of the health department. They'd already required us to have it. So they took what was a local item, turned it into a statewide program, and adopted this regulation, is what it really came down to.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff?
I'd like to second the motion if it still
Okay, there's a
stands.
motion
and
by
make
Director
one-
Podel,
and-
second by Director Evans.
I also wanted to ask, I skimmed through that, it's incredibly detailed. Who is really following to make sure all those little itty bitty, everything is done? You have a lot of rules, regulations,
Well,
and
every
schedules.
2 years, we do an
Item
audit
number
on the
two,
program.
number two's in charge.
And periodically, I'll sit down with Braden, who's the collection supervisor, and see how he's doing it, as well as Ed does the same thing. But every 2 years, we sit down and we go over the whole program with you.
I have to say, this is when I realize how much work is done to make sure the sewer isn't seen, smelled, or heard.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. I think the whole department blown away by that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for the update. It's note and file, or is it a?
No, you need to accept it.
Need to accept
Take
it?
a motion accepting the 2014 SSMP.
Okay, we already have a motion, we already have a second, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jerome.
And next item, I am going to be leaving the dais and passing it over to the Vice President for 2.6.
Bring back some sandwiches, or?
Yeah, whatever you want. Food, cheesesteak.
Run down to George's.
We'll let you know when it's time to come back in. Okay, so 2.6, Chamber of Commerce mixer.
Yes, the board was 2 meetings ago, we tabled it from the last one, so that we had the full board here to discuss this. Director Evans and Hernandez were absent. In the past, the district did host in 2011 and 2012, as you, from the memo there, the Chamber of Commerce mixer, sundowner, whatever they actually call it. You can see the costs that were expended in there if you actually came to it. You know, the room is emptied out of the chairs, tables are brought in, food's brought in. We go through a pretty elaborate production for doing it. You can see we also have done things with the Chamber of Commerce where we hosted things over there to work with the Chamber. We got very little attendance. After the second one, there were some very interesting things that took place during the event. The first item was we were to have a table out front to help encourage Vallecitos. That was talked about ahead with the person from the Chamber. By the time we got there to set up, they'd already had everything set up. Let's just say they were slightly put out and miffed that we were inconveniencing them, that they had to accommodate us. So we had to have them move their tables to actually let us put a table out there. We were doing it to get people to sign up to the newsletter, sign up on the iPad. You know, if you do this, we'll do this for you, that type of thing. That was one thing. Diane and I were in here where the food was setting up, and I won't tell you how many people, but it was several. They came straight from the front door, straight in, asked for to-go boxes, filled them up with food, and left. I'm not kidding. When we got to the end, we had people waiting around to see how much food they could take and take it home with them. We also tried to give out a little gift that could be raffled or give out different things. So Lisa had worked with one of our supplier vendors that do plants, real nice little plant with succulents and all that kind of stuff in it. We gave those away. We had quite a few extras sitting on the back row plus on the tables. Well, they assumed that was fair game, and they took all of those as well. People just, if these microphones could have been unplugged, they probably would have taken them. A bulk of the people that I spoke to when they were here were not even from the San Marcos area. A lot were from Vista, a lot from Carlsbad, and some others that were just here because there was food, to be perfectly honest. We asked that we be allowed to speak during the event so that we could at least say who Vallecitos is. It took all we could get. Director Podol spoke one time, and then we had Kevin Hardy come over from Encino one time to speak, to explain what it was. After Kevin spoke, all we heard back from the Chamber and some of its members was, oh, that was gross. You were talking about sewer while we were eating and drinking. It took all we could just to get them to stop and listen. So bottom line, right or wrong, good or bad, that was the stuff that took place during those two events. The board kind of said, well, you know what, we really don't get a whole lot of value out of that for the amount of money we spend. So that's just the background to tell you how it was hosted and then why it was stopped. Like I said, not to debate the pros or cons or value of it, that's your choice. That's all I have.
Okay, so this was called up by Director Sinella, and so I don't think we've had that for a few years, right?
2012.
2012, yeah. So any comments?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Was there any positives, Dennis? You didn't want to debate the pros and cons, but
You know,
I heard a lot of cons.
To be perfectly honest, Director Snella, there was not a whole lot of positive. I tried to talk to a lot of the people in here. The comments were immediately, oh yeah, I got to pay your damn water bill every month. You know, why can't you guys just reduce rates? I don't understand. The water comes from, it rains. So of course we're trying to talk to them. But again, my perspective of walking around trying to talk, there was very little positive that came out of it. I would say the group that was here, it might have been beneficial to them to talk to each other, but I hate to say it's also like a coffee clutch and a group that plays bridge every Saturday night together. They all knew each other, and it was just the same old bunch that were sitting together talking. Again, so from the standpoint of exposure for the water district, the only exposure I think we got was we hosted it.
And the reason why I asked that this item be brought before us for consideration was when we were meeting with the consultant on our outreach initiative that we've been talking about lately. When I met with her personally, one theme that we kept going back to is that the district needed to be more proactive in the outreach efforts. And the consultant actually said that that theme had come about in her other conversations with some of the other board members as well.
Right.
I see this as a way to be proactive. And when I first proposed this, I think it was 2 months ago, because we missed it last meeting, or a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was important. Today, given what I know as far as the escalation and the drought, and what we just passed a few minutes ago with taking it to level 2, I think doing stuff like this is probably more important than ever. And I understand that, and I wasn't around a couple years ago when you had tried this. My understanding of the chamber is there's been a lot of changes over the last couple of years. It's the
Last couple months.
Yeah, the organization is
Yeah.
growing. I have attended chamber events, mixers, and things over the course of the years, although not recently. And if I recall correctly, not only do you have a good representation of the local business community at those events, but when I had attended, there were local officials, there were community leaders. In some cases, there was members of the media. So I remember it as being a very positive thing, and one that we could get if we were able to tailor a message on conservation and provide some more information on the drought. I think it would be a great resource and avenue to do that. I think it's part of the consideration is that we would engage the chamber if the board does support this, and that we would set some ground rules or some expectations that we want to get from this. For example, setting up a table or tables to give out handouts and other materials, an opportunity to have a 10-minute presentation on conservation, the drought, etc. And then in addition to that, I saw your budget numbers. I think for this sort of bang for your buck, if you will, these numbers, if we did something similar, would be reasonable. However, I'd also be open to, as part of this consideration, that we set a budget. And if that's $2,000 or $2,500 or $500, I don't know, and then we don't surpass that budget with regards to food. Maybe we do appetizers and soda.
That's what this
or
was. It
something.
was appetizers,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Finger foods.
And I would, again, I just want to stress, I think, given all the different the outreach efforts that are going on now that Hollywood's getting involved, we're spending a tremendous amount of money and resources. Sounds like we're going to be hiring staff even. I think this is just one piece of that.
Sure.
And I would ask that the board seriously consider it, but also keep in mind as you consider it that it's not something that if we agree to do it this one time doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do it over and over again. Let's give it a try one time and see if we have a better experience this time around, and then we can reconsider if we want to do it again.
Yeah, I would agree there is a different leadership
Yes.
than what there was. Lisa did work with the people in charge at that point to where we told them we want a table, because the second time when we hosted it, it was Joni? It was very clear that we're not going to do it unless we have that 10-minute window of opportunity. It was still just like herding cats, and I probably could have jumped in there and said, stop, everybody listen, but it's not my event.
Yeah.
I was very reluctant to take over. So it could be different now with the new body that's running.
I think it could be.
Having been the president of the Chamber of Commerce back in the day, you need to jump in there. It is people milling around. I think for the most part, at least the ones I've been to recently, you can see the residents are out there and the business people. I think the big key here is twofold. Is one, that they have had leadership change. And I think we have an ability to direct that relative to an event we may support if the board supports it. But I think that's a magnificent idea about establishing a budget. I would go a step further in that perhaps, and I know others have done this, we could suggest to some of our vendors that they come and present a ware or something and help with the overall budget. A couple of $100, $300, $400 is not going to kill a firm that we've been supplying contracts to for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think there's a way of minimizing that, and Director Snell hit it right on the head. This drought and this potential of moving to this level 3 is must, that word must get out, because things are becoming better in the economic world, and if that happens, it's just
Stop.
gonna squash it.
Yep.
So giving people as much forewarning as possible, and this could be an event to do that. And again, it's maybe.
I think the budget
maybe just
amount that was
one-time
there of-
Deal and go from there.
20, was it 3,000?
Yeah.
About
well,
3 grand. I mean, that was 3 years old, so I mean, if
Yeah.
that was probably a reasonable number to still hold on to.
Yeah.
If the board's gonna do it, I hate to say it, do it right.
Yes,
Of course.
and dictate.
Yep.
Director Evans?
Well, when I saw this on the agenda, I remembered the discussion when we decided not to do it before, and I had hesitations about it. But I have been doing a lot of thinking, I appreciate the comments, and I do feel it's a different chamber than we had 2 years ago, and it's worth giving them a chance. And I think the timing is a very good timing, especially with us taking on the level 2. The limiting the budget is, I agree with, that we want to do it right. So I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
I'll keep it
too
under
low.
10,000.
But I don't want us to be extravagant, and I really want us to be in control if we're going to go with this.
Sure.
And because sometimes when a business sponsors it, it's because you want them to come and eat dinner at your restaurant, or you passing out your cards. Well, we already deal with them. We're not getting new people. What we need to do is to let them know about the drought and how critical it is to their businesses and to their lives. And that's a big responsibility on ours, and there's no point to me, unless we can do that.
Sure.
Unless we can present and show things, and I don't know, have videos of ads or whatever going on, but something that.
Yeah, and I think if
And
we.
maybe we need to select someone who's gonna, maybe we tell you, Dennis, you are gonna walk in with a very big stick.
Yeah,
But,
and if there is a change and we can coordinate and guarantee it coming in, then I think we'll probably get some value out of it. But like I said, after the one in 2012, it was just like, wow.
Well, I appreciate your honesty on that part, but I also feel if that's what we have, I'd rather spend this money on like our Firewise landscape workshop and know we're presenting us.
Sure.
Right, so I have a few mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, I've been to a few of these, and I would also agree that the money could be better spent in other areas, because the people that come here for this event don't come here for information. And there's no start and stop time. I mean, there are people coming drifting in and out, and so I think it would be difficult to get a message out if you're trying to hit the group, because there is no real group. It's kind of individuals that may or may not come in. So they may come in for a minute, they may come in for the entire time. So as experience what we've experienced in the past, I think there are better ways to spend money to get our message out, to go to the community groups for breakfast, for lunches, and get the information out there where they're more likely to listen to you than if they're here eating shrimp and drinking wine. So I'm thinking that that's a better place to put our ratepayers' money is in different areas than this one. So, with that being said, yes.
Well, sort of to piggyback on that, and I don't know the chamber, I haven't been involved in quite some time, but let's say we were to hold an event, a community event, but we make a point, it's not, we're sponsoring, what's this called? I forgot the word.
Mixer.
A mixer. We're not sponsoring a mixer for the Chamber of Commerce, but we actually present something. I'm going to use this Firewise landscape just because it's in front of me. We actually present something here, but we host it and it's open to the public, but we make an aggressive, that's what I'm trying to say, an effort that the chamber is invited, and in the process, they're here. It's not the same?
Well, you're looking at me, so
I'm assuming you
you're
or
asking me, so-
Jim know
so-
something about the chamber, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I'll attempt to answer your question, Director Evans. I think, and Dennis actually had brought this up, when we hosted just an event, that we didn't get a lot of participation. My remembrance of these mixers is that they're well advertised throughout the chamber. I think there's a new energy within the San Marcos Chamber of Commerce. And I would, if I recall correctly, I think they were, 100 people, 125 sometimes that would come. And I do remember specifically that the host of the mixers did have an opportunity to speak and talk about their business and what they were doing. We're not trying to sell anybody water per se, but we're gonna use this as a way, as an outreach opportunity. I think if we do it right and we set the expectations up front with the chamber organizers, if you just look at this room, we have 2 large screens on both sides. There certainly could be a video or a message going on in those screens. We can put up banners and put up, some other things, and then also have an opportunity to give a 10 or 15-minute little presentation on conservation. I'm stressing that, it came up over and over again when I met with, is it Patty or Patsy? Patricia. We have to go to them. And in this case, we're inviting them to us, but we're doing it at one of their regular events. And so it's a way for us to be proactive and capture an audience there. I'm not sure about the chamber member. I mean, my understanding is the people who come to these mixers, they're paid members of the chamber. I don't foresee people coming in, grabbing their food to go. I think they're going to come, they're going to network, they're going to do their normal routine that they do, and they're going to appreciate us as a host, and they're going to respect our wishes, and especially if we set that up front, to be able to give them a little message about water. And I also think that just lost my train of thought because of the phone call, but yeah, the media, there's gonna be a lot of media about this level too, and there was already some media about us taking action tonight on this. I'm sure there's gonna be a follow-up story that we did indeed take action on this. I think that everybody's attention is gonna be much more focused, and they're actually gonna come here because they're business owners and water is important to them, that they're gonna come here and they're gonna wanna learn a little bit about water. Yes.
Yes.
And the last item I had was, I don't know when we might be able to schedule this, but between now and November is the heaviest attendance of mixers because it is the silly season and the politicos are out there and the people want to interact with them, and so it may be even a better opportunity. And again, I don't know when the time frame of this could happen, if in fact the board is in agreement that it should happen. But I personally would like to see us try at least once, and then give it a critique afterwards, and see if we have a better outcome with more direct interaction on our part.
I maybe ask one more question. If, let's say we do this and we have 125 people show up, do you think that if they're already business people, they should already be aware of the drought and they should be aware of the situation? So how do you anticipate that this will go any further than them? I mean, I know if I come to a landscape workshop or I talk specific conservation, I can go home and talk about it and share it with my kids and share it with my neighbors or share it with people in my neighborhood. I'm thinking as a business member, I'm not really gonna go, I mean, I might, I'm just wondering, will they go and start spreading our message? Or how do you?
I personally think
versus
that,
us spending the same $3,000 on a very specific, we're doing this for our ratepayers to learn.
I personally think they will, because these are typically folks who are very active in the community. It's not just business owners that come to these, although business owners are also neighbors, and they have family and they have neighbors that they can speak to about this as well, just like anybody else would. But there's community leaders that come to these groups. There's other elected officials that may, they may be city council members, for example, or state assembly members who they know about the drought, but to come and actually have, come to a water district and see it and hear it, it may trigger, and they can definitely communicate it that way. I would imagine that a lot of these business owners are engaging social media, and they may tweet something out to their followers that say that they were at Vallecitos Water District, they learned about such and such about the drought. You just don't know. And to my original point, and thank you, Director Hernandez, but until we try it one more time, and it's a different time. I know it sounds like there was a bad experience the first time, but until we try it again,
It's been a couple years, there's a new renewed energy with the chamber. I think there's only one way to find out, but I can't stress enough that we need to lead on this drought matter, and leading means outreach, and is the best way we can do it, and to communicate what's going on and how it's gonna impact them.
Okay, just to comment on what Director Hernandez said about November, I could also argue the other way, which would say that you're gonna have all those people showing up with their party hats and handouts who are running for office and want to be in an atmosphere where people who are running for office want to meet other people. Be that as it may, I think what we're gonna need here is, does anybody want to put something forward here?
Yeah, sure. I will move to approve 2.6 as discussed, and including that we set a budget. So I don't know if that means we need to discuss that budget number, or?
If you accept what we've already spent in the past, that was a couple
Okay.
years back.
Not
that
to
should-
exceed
that
what
should-
that budget number from last time.
And a one-time
And it's a one-time
event.
event with, to be
Cheek
considered
after.
thereafter.
Yeah. I'll second that.
Second by
Are we
Director.
going to include in there that, or do we need to, that if we do this, we're in charge
Yeah.
of our
I've got
messaging?
pretty good
Yeah.
idea.
Okay.
Yeah, the motion is to approve it as we discussed with regards to setting expectations, a budget, and all that good stuff.
All right, have a roll call?
I'm gonna say yes, with reservations.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Somebody want to go grab a pen? And we will just see when,
Yeah.
I'll turn Lisa loose on that. Add that to our list of things to do with the drought.
Well, towards that end, Dennis, I certainly wouldn't mind, I think I'm on that committee anyway, PR or whatever. I wouldn't mind meeting with Lisa and the chamber people to, lighten her load and make sure that the direction is.
Okay, we'll see as once we make contact, we'll
Yeah.
see what they say.
Let's see what they say. No?
Okay.
Okay.
Good news and bad news, Al.
Yeah.
You're now the chair of that new committee. You know better than to leave a room.
I thought you weren't gonna let me back. I said, I think he's gonna close the meeting, I'm gonna be sitting out there. And I'm done. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, the next one, 2.7, public work contracts, prevailing wage.
Yes, you may recall, probably a month and a half ago, give or take, Mr. Whitney, something or other, on behalf of George Weir. As he indicated when we met with him, Mr. Weir came in, he met with brought counsel, his superintendent, he met with Ken Gertis, Jeff, and myself, and this is where he basically, he just said there's this very little secret out there with respect to Vallecitos doesn't require payment of prevailing wage. Based upon the fact that he felt, as he stated, as the attorney stated, he makes his own product for chip seal, not chip sealing, slurry seal, parking lots. Based upon that fact, he would have assumed he would have won the bid. The bid was a difference of $500. His opinion was that, or concern was that the contractor who did win the contract was not paying prevailing wage. He was concerned that overtime and double time was not paid on the weekend for the work, and a variety of other things. He had no basis for that beyond the fact that he didn't win the bid, is what it came down to. When I met with them, with counsel and Ken, I agreed we would look into it to make sure our little process, because you keep in mind there's $5,000 jobs that are very informal. We say you pay prevailing wage, boom, 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 they're done in 3 days, versus a capital project, totally different animal. You'll see a couple sections in here that we refer to in the memo. You'll see the attachments that I did include to the packet, which does show our contracts do require payment of prevailing wage. We do require submittal of certified payrolls. per the contract, and we do let the contractors know that when we have pre-bid meetings, they have to certify and pay prevailing wage. So we comply fully with what the law says. There was a statement made by Whitney, I'm sorry, I forget his last name, that we should hire an auditor and verify that prevailing wage is paid. And just to back up to give the board, in case you're not all familiar with what prevailing wage is, as Jeff indicated, that came out of action a long time ago by the courts. And it follows union scale, is all it is. It's a union scale payment. We do require that on any public works contract. If we were to audit, the audit is limited to nothing more than we would look at Billy Joe Bob got paid 20 hours at $43 an hour, which equals $860. That's it. That's the extent of our audit. We have no authority, no right, no legal basis to speak to the employee, to ask for any documentation. We have no right to do that. Director Hernandez mentioned during the presentation that when he submits his billing to, I think it was a school district you were doing work for, Jim, they require certified payroll or he doesn't get paid. Well, that's what our contract says. You turn it in. If you don't give it to us, we delay payment. But it's also, you're turning it into a school district who's probably getting grants or some kind of a federal fund, which is required of block grants, state funds, and federal funds. So unless you turn certified payroll in, you don't get paid. I would almost guarantee you, as it moves up the food chain, it's not being audited. It's required to be turned in. As noted in there, the Department of Industrial Relations is the agency that has authority over prevailing wage. And I can go back to one event when we did the Mulberry Pipeline, which was from Twin Oaks all the way down Mulberry, all the way down to Richland. The contractor who did that job, we were approached by 2 of his employees that said, we're not being paid prevailing wage. Okay. We told them what they needed to do. They contacted this bunch, Industrial Relations. They contacted us. They said, turn all your certified payrolls in to us. Thank you very much. And we never heard word one back from them again. Pro, con, good, bad. We just got a letter at the very end, said they'd done their investigation. Thank you for providing the information. So we didn't even know if they did or did not pay prevailing wage. So kind of the long and the short of it is everything we do according to Hoyle, we're following the law. We do follow it appropriately. And we do require, he did in fact turn his certified payroll in as he was required to. With respect to the fact that he did not believe they paid overtime and double time for the Saturday and Sunday work, you may recall that he brought up an issue, well, yeah, but you modified it to allow it to happen on Friday as well. Well, if he would have asked for that, we would have done the same thing. What he didn't mention there, and the district has the same authority, is if we're going to modify work schedule or hours to accommodate a certain situation, it's still 8 hours a day or 40 hours in a work week. What the gentleman does that does the pavement and the ceiling, you can imagine most of his work is done on the weekends because that's when he can get into the parking lot. So the reason that his employees weren't paid overtime or double time was the fact that their 40-hour work week includes the weekend. And they did not exceed the 8 hours or the 40 hours. So
And just to add,
beyond that,
the legislature doesn't really want local agencies getting into this enforcement issue. There's been a trend in recent years legislatively to change the law, to put the enforcement, to move it more into the Department of Industrial Relations. Basically, you got a complaint, send it up there.
Send it up there.
We'll get the certified, they have an obligation to provide us this stuff. But if we start getting into whether or not somebody's monitoring them, and it's an added expense for us, it also puts us into the business of trying to figure out whether or not overtime applies, as Dennis was saying, or whether or not, what are the certified prevailing rates, which do change. I mean, it's just so that the legislature just said, look, bring it, they took it away from some of the schools and some of the other independent monitors, because there was this kind of burgeoning business occurring about these independent monitors going in and monitoring all this stuff. They just took it away from them. So, you know.
As Dennis has suggested, George Weir, the contractor, called him, wanted to talk to me. He in fact did talk to me. We had a nice 20-minute conversation. He was very appreciative of the time that was spent discussing with him. I am firsthand knowledge of prevailing wage. We are doing a project right now requiring it. Everything that's been discussed, the employees do have an opportunity to set their work week. The employees that are working out in the desert, they've got 410s that they elected to do so they can get out of there as soon as they can. His concern, of course, was just that, accountability. He's frustrated at the accountability, and a number of people are, because really, you hit it right on the head. Joe Bob worked 10 hours at $50 an hour, $500. Maybe Joe Bob isn't getting $50 an hour. Maybe he's saying, hey, we're gonna pay you 40, you're making 10 more than you would have.
Yep.
You're gonna be happy, or you don't have to take the job. So there is a lot of that. Two items that I wanted to ask about, because in our documents here, we have a $1,000 threshold under which, if I read it correctly,
Anything over $1,000.
anything over $1,000. I know some districts are up to 50,000, and I don't know. And that's where my next item is going, which is, it would be a nice analysis because of real hands-on knowledge that they are paying 25% more on this project that we're doing because of this prevailing wage issue. And it's a $1 million project. Now I understand some of the major projects, because of the technical requirements and the contractors who are actually doing them, such that they have a history in it, so they can qualify. In fact, our union shops and paying large wages anyway. But it would be nice to have an analysis as to, I saw on this 2.2 that we're not doing, and it looks like a $1.6 million project, what the opportunity could be if it was not prevailing wage, if we in fact had to, and I think I remember that we would have to associate with another agency and have them administer. I don't quite remember how that works.
Jeff can tell me when I'm wrong here, but there have been empirical studies that are done ad nauseum on the cost and impact of union and prevailing wage scale versus non-union, non-prevailing wage. We unfortunately don't have that latitude, and the cities, as Jeff mentioned last time, they have since lost that latitude. If you're getting any kind of funding or any kind of work, you can no longer exempt yourself from that. That's gone.
Can I understand that?
We can get empirical studies. The problem is, I'm going to pick on Jason's dad. So Donnie comes in, being a contractor, and if he doesn't have to pay prevailing wage, what he's going to do is get the cheapest labor he can find versus what he's going to pay them. So he may pay him $17 an hour. Ken might have guys that he picks up off the street, he pays them $23 an hour, and they're still saving $40 an hour. So all you have is a fixed cost as a prevailing wage. You have no way of knowing what they're charging. You have no way of knowing because there's no set standard for what you have to pay them. He could be paying minimum wage people, billing them out at $50 an hour. It's all profit. So that's why a lot of the studies that are out there that have talked about that, they're empirical in nature. They're not definitive, saying, yeah, you save or you cost more than this. They're just empirical. I can tell you that.
I know of no way legally for us to get
Get out of
around the payment of prevailing wage on our projects.
Oh, I thought did I hear wrong? Or maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah.
That if we associated with another agency, who
No,
had
what Encina wanted to do, that you just had this discussion, is because the 5 of you are partners in a shared facility.
Yeah.
You have equal authority and ownership in the facility. Because of that partnership, there was the ability that they considered whether or not the final document that Greg put out to the board said, yeah, you might be able to do that, but
Oh,
now,
then
so that was a different issue
Makes
because
sense.
you had common ownership in one facility,
All right.
is why you had that.
All right, well, I understand. He was, at the end of the conversation, he, thanked me very much, thanked the district very much. I guess he's gonna have to do his own investigation and bring it to Labor Relations Board if he feels.
Yeah, if I might point out something that was very interesting is, I can't remember the gentleman's name that's now his superintendent. He used to bid directly against George. face-to-face, head-to-head.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was sitting in the meeting with me, and I said, okay, let me just to be clear here, you two are competitors. He said, yeah. So I just looked him in the face, I said, so are you telling me you never paid prevailing wage when you won these jobs over George Weir? He says, well, of course not, I always paid prevailing wage, I just had different labor rates, the amount of labor that I had. So in other words, his own foreman, who was sitting there, who bid head-to-head against him and beat him on numerous jobs, he said, of course I paid prevailing wage.
Yeah,
In other words, he didn't get the job, Director Hernandez.
yeah, I got it.
That's what it comes down to.
You know, I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I do understand the frustration, and, hey, some you win, some you lose.
Yeah,
Moving on.
Note and file?
Note and file.
Thank you.
thank you.
2.8, quarterly investment report.
You have the quarterly investment report here. If anybody would like any detail, I think we've got John ready to address it. Other than that, it's just a note and file, it's an update.
I think you're doing a fine job.
I take that as a note and file.
But someone else may have questions, no? No? So we note and file on that one.
Thank you.
Reports. I think we already gave it, but 3.1, general manager.
You've heard my song and dance on the drought, and then I'll save any other comments for a closed session.
I'll confine my comments to closed session also.
Okay. San Diego County Water Authority, anything to add?
No, I think it's just more of the same.
Encino Wastewater Authority, Capital Improvements Committee.
Unfortunately, I missed the Capital Improvements Committee, because I was in Washington DC.
I can't wait to hear your report on that.
I've got a full one right here.
Encino Wastewater Authority Policy and Finance Committee.
Well, we've had a meeting since then, so I've already gone on that one, but we did have a board meeting with Encino. So, the board meeting, we had action items, which was about revising the purchasing policy and procedures, resolution appropriating funds for the fiscal year 2015 operating and capital program budgets and establishing controls, and the vision for 2040, the EWA 2040 master plan. So, and I've already been told that the Policy and Finance Committee will not be meeting this month.
And neither will the Capital Committee. Because
So the next meeting will be the scheduled meeting with the Encino Wastewater Authority Board of Directors, which will be August 27th.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Director's report on travel, conferences, or seminars. Mr. Hernandez. I know
I'm
yours-
ready, I'm ready for
yours is gonna
it.
be
Yes,
lengthy,
mine's the
so I
big
can't
one.
wait for
Yeah.
it.
Yes, the trip to Washington DC was very fruitful, right up to the end. The word of bill has been passed, that's the Water Resources Development Act. And there is a section in there, and they said it was 1014. I couldn't find 1014, I found 114. But it was that the Army, this is a reverse appropriation bill now. Earmarks for the new members are, and if you've read the news, are gone. So, even with them gone, in years past, it still was the old way. Try to get the money, try to get approved, try to get built. Now, it's reverse appropriations. Now you find a project, you present it to the Army Corps, you get prioritized, and then they present for appropriation. Army Corps is the linchpin there. We met with Senator Boxer's legislative assistant, Darrell's legislative counsel, Duncan Hunter's senior legislative, and Representative Scott Peters. We physically met with him, and then we met with Brad Switchenberg. And as I say, everything was good, a very heavy support. The bills passed, they're all about water. And then we met with Brad, the Army Corps of Engineers, and in the bill, there was a 60-day time frame to begin to develop these guidelines as to how to proceed. And he said, well, let me be clear. This is not going to be something that's going to be done in weeks, probably not months, and probably going to be more than a year. And Sean, who was Furman's employee, part of their group, who is one of the lobbyists that we have employed, identified to him about the 60 days, and he just kind of went, well, we haven't read it yet. And it was already 30 days into the program. So that's where the gas kind of went out of the balloon. Fortunately, the next day, we met with Senator Feinstein's senior staff and just said, we need help. And he's been one of the folks who has been following this for years, so he knew exactly what the problems were. He indicated he would pick up the torch. The good news that came out of the Army Corps of Engineers, of course, they have been bombarded, quite frankly, from a lot of other agencies who want to get in line and get close, and we got a project. And he said, hey, you go do what North County Resources has done. Get a coalition together, get a program together, spend some of your money, and then get in line behind them. So we have been doing the right thing. And it's, I can imagine others who have other drums to beat are up there daily trying to get in front of everybody. But it is truly a function of building a good relationship with the Corps, both at Washington and here locally, and then getting them, and they're very supportive of our projects, and getting them to move us forward. So I think it's something that needs to continue. And I asked Sean, I said, because I really don't, you hear how lobbyists work. And so I just asked him, and he said, we just show up. We just keep showing up in the hallway, in the conferences, in the bathroom, wherever they can get an ear to pitch our projects and try to get a favorable step forward. That was Washington.
Director Martin? If I could add to that, I meant to piggyback, I was waiting for Jim to do his part. We did receive preliminary approval from the state for the funding for that alternative water supply study. So we've got a staff report and the support that says, yeah, we're gonna recommend it. Now it's one of those things, yeah, we recommended it, yeah, the money's there, so yeah, we think it'll get to you sometime in a reasonable time frame. So I think we've got pretty good assurance we're gonna get the money. So I think we'll be looking sometime in September to have that workshop with the board. See there?
Let there be light.
Let there be light.
Amen.
So we hopefully will be moving forward that pretty quickly, but we did get the preliminary approval of the funding for that study.
Were you able to do that without board members going up the works?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. We just kept you guys out of it and went right through.
Good job.
Any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
That's your only one?
No, I also was at the San Diego Reclaimed Water Facility Treatment,
Pure water?
Pure Water, and again, very interesting. They've been approved to go to $10 million, 10 million gallons a day, and it was interesting. There was 5 ladies in front of us, directors that were there. And when they went through the Colorado River, that it's being used, reused, dumped in the river, and dumped in the river. Well, then this has been going on forever.
That's why we tell you, have a beer, we need the water.
Yeah. So it was a good trip, well worth going, and learned a great deal.
I'll mention I was also on that trip, and I thought it was very worthwhile. I wasn't looking for a negative, but I thought the plant was interesting, the tour was interesting. However, I didn't really feel that the person giving it, I would have preferred Lisa to be there, who does a really good job at those things. She just didn't seem to be up on what she was doing, and maybe she was new, I don't know. But they had an engineer there, and no offense to the engineers in the room, she spoke like an engineer.
Probably was one.
Which really wasn't.
Chemical engineer.
Yeah, he was one. He was an engineer. He was one. And you could tell. I mean, he's an engineer, but, they need to have more people-friendly, I think, speakers. But she did a good job for what it was, I think. So, Mr. Snell was also there.
Yeah, and not to completely repeat what you guys just said, but I did find the reaction from the audience very telling and somewhat humorous when they talked about the dozens of points where the waste is already going into the river prior to getting to here. That was interesting. But what I applaud them for, not just the efforts on recycling water, that's great, but
their outreach approach on bringing in groups such as the one that we were on, and it seems like they do some stuff with some schools as well. You can tell that they're really taking a different approach than perhaps back in the old toilet to tap days when that was a debacle. They're really trying to get in front of the topic and try to change the perception before they really roll it out and you know, implement it if they ever get to that point.
Yeah, they definitely approached it differently than they did the first time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all the reports on travel or conferences. We're gonna move to other business. Possible change in regular board directors meeting.
We have nothing time-sensitive, nor actually any projects that we need to bring back before the board for the 18th. So unless there's some rash reason the board wants to have a meeting and pick a different day, we have nothing for the agenda at this point.
What's the 18th?
Yeah, we'll all be at CASA.
Right.
16th, 18th?
When are we leaving on the
20th.
20th. Okay. that's what I thought.
20th, everybody's probably going up on the
We leave
20th
that-
or
we
the
leave
day
that night,
before, yeah. But I said, as of this point, we have nothing that's pushing as far as time sensitive or anything else. So I would just,
Does anyone have a problem with canceling that meeting?
No?
No, seeing none?
okay, no board meeting, thank you.
Quarterly board expenses, there's my New York accent. Quarterly board expenses are attached for us to look at. Director's comments, future agenda items.
If I may,
Yes, certainly, please do.
I would like to have it on the next agenda, I guess would be in September, if we could just bring back our, what is the word? What we decided upon for our general manager's salary, I think we should be in sync. And we kind of said with the attorney, we're giving him a 2-year, and I think with Dennis's, he was gonna have another review in between, and I'd like to get everything on a 2-year. Can we have that?
So you can bring
You know
back
what I'm
the.
talking about?
This, yeah, and this was what I actually, when the motion was made, it was to have a 2-year review. It split the salary into 2 years, but then it said, however, that's after a good review after the 1 year. So it kind of contradicted itself to say it wanted to be 2-year, but it said after a 1 year, if that's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about, and I know
Yeah.
after our
It was-
discussion with our review with general counsel, it said 2 years. I just want to make sure we're all on the same.
So I'll bring back the motion that was
Bring back
made.
for discussion.
Bring back for the motion, okay.
Sure. And one last thing I have.
I had the comment,
Oh,
too.
go ahead. Yeah.
It's becoming a little bit of not a little bit, I mean, it's becoming frustrating for me. I don't understand the website recordings of our meetings. I'm on our website now on the iPad, and the last one that was posted was June 18th. We're on August 6th now. I understand there's a second party, third parties, we contract that out to another group, and what's their scope of work? What's the expectations that we set to them that these meetings will be posted on the website in a relatively timely manner?
Can you come up and just explain the process of what we do, Lisa? Well, how do we get it to where we provide it to the city? They have to convert it, and then we move it over.
Are you talking about the televised meetings?
No. Well, I've yet to find those. And I don't know if I have Time Warner. I know on our website it says if you have Time Warner, go to 123 or 129. I've looked, I haven't been able to see it. I don't know if it's just my cable service or what it might be. That's why I'd asked if a few months ago, if anybody's actually seen it, because I find it kind of hard to, there's, we have 100+ people with our district. Has anybody ever seen one on TV? I mean, somebody would have.
Well, we'll have to just go back and
You have?
verify,
Okay.
yeah, we'll just have to go back and verify
It's
the
on a
time that they
Monday.
play it.
Yeah,
and-
on a
and what
Monday.
channel.
But what I'm talking about specifically tonight
Okay.
is on the recordings that we post on the website. So my understanding of the process, and correct me if I'm wrong, like I very well could be, is that we're recording it. And then at some point after the meetings, the recording, I'm assuming it's a digital recording, gets sent to a third party
The videographer,
to process it, edit it, whatever they do with it, and then they post it on our website. In the agreements that we have with this third party, some sort of scope of work, I would imagine, did we give them any deliverables as it pertains to, this needs to be done within 72 hours, within a week? I mean, we're going on, what is it, almost 2 months now. And I just think that we're defeating the purpose of even doing it if we're not gonna give the public the information or the availability to review it in a timely manner.
Well, you're missing the July meetings is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we'll look into it.
And you can't find a time warner at all.
I can't, no, but.
So we know the time that's being done on time
Yeah,
warner.
I-
If
I
it is
think
to
we
be
even have that
done.
on the newsletter noted there again already, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll verify.
I did check with the videographer after last time you made a comment. He said they've all been airing, so.
And
Yeah.
they might, I just, the couple times I've gone to look for it.
Okay, we'll
you know,
verify.
On Monday at 6:30, I believe, is what the directions are on the website. I haven't been able to see
And
it.
they're not on there.
Okay, we'll verify.
That's good enough. And I'll, yeah, we'll find out about it.
You can stay right there, because one last quick thing is I
Oh,
was
no.
out and about Friday around town, and I stopped at the Boys and Girls Club, which is not really a happening place, but I found this going on at the Boys and Girls Club. I was really shocked. I was like, I can't believe, if you look over on the right-hand side there, there's our Lisa doing a hula dance at the Boys and Girls Club. The happening place in San Marcos. Actually, it was a little bit earlier. That's Tuba on the left in the rear. Mr. Tuba?
Tuba. Just Tuba.
Boy, you gotta have a personality to do that kind of stuff for
He
those
was a
age
clown
kids.
for Ringland or
Really?
Barnum Bailey. Yeah, he was a clown.
He said he was with the
Yeah.
circus.
Yeah.
It was very, very, very good, and I think this is done by the St. County Water Authority. But I think we pay for it. But the kids that were there, and there 75, 100 kids,
They said there was 144.
Whoa.
Yeah.
they're small. They had a great time. Tuba did a really, I thought it was an excellent job talking to the kids about water and conservation, and you were as well, and you did a great dance up there. You had the steps almost down in that picture. I have other pictures, but I didn't want to show them. I didn't want to embarrass you too badly. But they might pop up someday.
All right. Well,
But,
now that I have a photo, I'll tweet it.
Yeah, there you go. It really was a good job, and I think it spoke very well of Vallecitos Water District. Other than Mr. Tuba didn't know how to say Vallecitos.
About
Keep
Vallejo.
saying Valhalla, Vallejo, and Bunctious. So, but thank you very much.
And thanks for sharing, President Martin. I just want to point out, because I don't know if the public can see the picture, but all the kids there, and I have a kid about this same age, it's hard to keep their attention, but
Yeah,
you
they're
can
all
tell
looking.
they're engaged.
They're looking, yeah.
Yeah, they're interested, so kudos, great job.
He kept those are all the counselors up there.
Yeah.
He actually had the counselors come up, and the kids were just super enthralled. You can imagine, you have your counselor up there doing a hula. He was, I was totally engaged, and I'm not usually, it's kind of fun, so worked out.
And it's hard to keep him,
Exactly.
sitting still for
Herding
long periods
cats.
of time.
Oh, they had
Thank
him
you.
singing songs.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you get that?
He did have some good songs. And what I thought was very interesting is he had they had them all singing the song, and the girls sang it, and then we had the guys sing it, or I might have this reversed, he did it in Spanish. And I thought that was so great, because all the kids, most of them are bilingual to some degree, but it was like, wow, they were all entertained, but they were just enthralled. And the way you see them now, that was toward the end of it. The kids were just involved the entire, it was an hour program.
It was an hour. He did a good job.
Hour and 10 minutes, good job. So, thank you very much.
We'll get back to you on that, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, very good. And now we're gonna move into closed session.